on the short list is Janet Stansfield for Lyme Revisited. The comment is, in Lyme Revisited, we join a group of Austen admirers and academics on a 3-day conference to Lyme to revisit sites seen by Persuasion's Anne Elliot. Our narrator, Annie, has a knowing academic air, but a romantic, humorous heart. It's an enjoyable, good, old-fashioned bit of modern Austen-inspired, keeping it all sardonically in, with that seemingly undetachable English politeness that so many of Austen's heroines have, in the face of peoples, be they smug, impertinent, downright rude, and sometimes shamefully improper. And there are some lovely descriptions of Lyme.
Janet's not here, so Hassan T is going to read it.
Thank you. As you've hopefully worked out, I'm not Janet Stansfield, but Janet is my mother, and unfortunately because of ill health, she couldn't be here this evening, but she asked if I could read on her behalf. I'm just going to read from the very beginning. Lyme Revisited. The young people were all wild to see Lyme. Jane Austen. Annie remembered that Lyme, in Jane Austen's Persuasion, was 17 miles away from Uppercross. She had travelled further, but by high-speed rail, she had covered much more ground in a much quicker way than in a carriage. But then she had to get a bus from Axminster, for the station at Lyme had long since closed. Railways came after Jane Austen's lifetime and revolutionised travel, but then, if there had not been the relatively short period of carriages before then, there would have been no tales of bandits, or of carriages overturned, or, in Emma, Mr. Elton's precipitate proposal. Annie struggled against the wind, imagining the carriages as she plodded along Broad Street in Lyme. The 2 carriages, Mr. Musgrove's coach containing the 4 ladies, and Charles's curricle, in which he drove Captain Wentworth, were descending the long hill into Lyme. She mouthed that quotation, priding herself that she was pretty accurate, even if not perfect, as she struggled with her rucksack on foot to the hotel. Now a faded holiday resort for families with young children and some vestiges of Regency elegance, the bay at Lyme and the Devon Cove beyond is pretty rather than arresting, and offers richesses to the youthful fossil hunter rather than a watering place for the aristocracy. A distinct draught sweeps along the street where lies the small hotel in which Annie is to be staying for a 3-day conference on Jane Austen's Lyme. Annie is already talking to other Janeites, even if that is not a pejorative word in anyone's language, who are to share the themed weekend. Annie imagines Dr. Smith is the most outspoken of the group, an older man, hair receding, peppered now with white hairs, with a rather bullish, Wordsworthy and craggy face. Annie has seen and heard him in the chat forum, not exactly dominating the chat, but always having plenty to say. Despite that, he's a bit of an enigma, Annie thinks, as she struggles along the street. She's attempting to rejuvenate herself after a difficult, messy divorce, and she supposes that she is young enough to think about starting again, but certainly not with Dr. Smith, who, to his credit, though a bachelor, had never been presumptuous in his online chatting. However, when she enters the drawing room a couple of hours later, Dr. Smith quickly intercepts her before she can pick up a drink. "Hello, Annabella," for that was her online name. "So glad you could come." The impertinence of it. Anyone would think he'd put the weekend on himself instead of the redoubtable Dr. Marigold. He moves unbidden to secure Annie a drink, and he looks straight past Dr. Smith and, horror of horrors, spies the tall, upright frame of none other than William Parsons. He, of all people. Implicated in her divorce, but quite erroneously, he's something of a Lothario in their Oxford College, and admittedly remarkably handsome, with Byronic rather than Wordsworthian features. William Parsons is studying for his PhD, and he does not recall seeing him being a part of the pre-Lyme set online. And, she thought, his PhD was on Shelley, not Austen. But, she surmised, he must have his reasons for attending, rather than deliberately seeking her out after their ill-advised mutual attraction. It could not even be classed as a fling. Embarrassed, Annie bowed her head as William moved towards her. Luckily, she felt now she was flanked by Dr. Smith and Dr. Marigold, who is immediately recognisable with hair swept back into a chignon. She has a deep voice, wide, stalwart hips, and flat, laced-up shoes. A nice little sherry party. William stood opposite her, beaming broadly. He cupped his glass, swirling the golden liquid inside. Annie, I thought it was you. Can I tear you away from socialising here for a walk along that seawall, that notorious cob from which Louisa Musgrove fell? I promised I wouldn't let you be jumped down the steps like Louisa. I would be by no means willing to spoil any pleasure of yours, William, but I can assure you I would not be in the least likely to consent to being jumped down the steps. Rather, like my namesake Anne, I would be the slightly older woman with a ruined past, appealing for common sense after any such mischief.